Hi everyone, Izumono Kuni22 here with a Final Fantasy XIV related video. Today's topic is gender locking in Final Fantasy XIV. I wanted to share an article I found on PCGameIn.com written by Kelly Pask on the subject of gender locking in Final Fantasy XIV. It is a very charged issue amongst the players of the Final Fantasy XIV community, and as we're exploring Shadowbringers with the new playable races in the mix, we are constantly giving a glaring reminder of the gender locking issue that the game currently has looming over it. Firstly, I'd like to reiterate that I did not write this article. It is written by Kelly Pask on PCGamesIn.com, and please check out her article. Also, apologies for the background noise. I must have my AC on, or else I will melt here in this room. And trying to record this beforehand without the air conditioning on was just killing me. So I'm so sorry for that. Please stick around regardless. Please like and subscribe. Hit the bell button for notifications, and let's hop to it. And I'll give my commentary at the end of the article. I will also link the link to the article in the description of this video, so you can check it out at your convenience as well. But if you want to listen to my dulcet tones on the go, here we go. This article really hit the nail on the head, and yeah, I'll just let it speak for itself, and then I'll talk about it afterwards. Okay, so why does Final Fantasy XIV still have gender-locked races in 2019? Give us bunny boys, you cowards. One of the biggest reveals from the announcement of Final Fantasy XIV's upcoming expansion, Shadowbringers, was the Viera Evilis's reclusive rabbit folk, which would be the newest playable race hitting the MMO. Viera have become darlings among the community since their first appearance in Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, later being popularized by Final Fantasy XII cast member and Sky Pirate Fran. She made an awesome appearance in Final Fantasy XIV earlier this year, an era I now lovingly refer to as Final Fantasy XIV, which was part of the ongoing Return to Evilis raid series, which blends themes and story beats from Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy XII. Fans, or should that be friends, were eager to see the playable race in action. During Square Enix's Paris Fan Fest earlier this year, we finally got to see the bunny-eared people in game, looking equally enchanting and fan-servicey, with their starting gear being based on Fran's ornate and delicate outfit from Final Fantasy XII. Fans were quick to notice, however, that only female models for Viera were shown, leading many to the question if male Viera would be a playable option. During a Q&A conference with press, game director Naoki Yoshida was asked about the absence of male Viera and the possibility of the race being gender-locked to women only. Yoshida refused to comment on the answer, instead remarking that more would be revealed at the Japan Fan Fest, which took place last week. Stirring the pot further, Yoshida also remarked that the Viera would likely be the final race to be added to Final Fantasy XIV, leading many to believe that a reveal for male Viera options would be coming. And here you see Hrothgar in the picture, so the future. Or now our present, sorry. Oh boy, did Square Enix have a surprise for fans at Japan Fest, or Fan Fest. Rather than the expected unveiling of the male Viera, Yoshida announced an entirely new playable race coming to the game, Hrothgar. Based on the Ronso tribe featured in Final Fantasy X, my favorite Final Fantasy by the way, the Hrothgar are a race of big, beastie cats that make the Mikote look like domestic tabbies in comparison. It was then revealed that both Viera and Hrothgar would be gender-locked, with Viera being female-only and Hrothgar only available as male. What's better than one gender-locked race? Two gender-locked races, apparently. While male Viera certainly exists within Final Fantasy canon, they're described as being incredibly solitary and aggressive people who don't show themselves to others, and have yet to make an official appearance in the games. The lore and mystery surrounding male Viera is the reason cited by Yoshida for not including them in Final Fantasy XIV, with the Hrothgar being conceptualized in order to provide a male-only experience for players. Gender locking both races for the reasons above feels draconian, especially given Final Fantasy XIV's rule-breaking nature. It frequently defies its own lore just so it makes sense as an MMO. The most obvious illustration of this is how every single player character is given the title of Warrior of Light, even though, in Final Fantasy XIV lore, there is technically only one of them. A more relevant example of this lore breaking is the Mikote race. And I'm just going to pause right here. This is a point that I bring up quite frequently when I get into discussions about this topic. Caveat over, continuing with the article. The Mikote race. A race described as being isolated in nature and low in population, but in-game are one of the most popular playable races. It's difficult to go 5 minutes without being surrounded by armored catgirls. Not that I'm complaining. This is very true. And here you see a depiction of Mikote, male and female, and the Rokugan, male and female, which is the next portion of the article. If a game that so frequently has its rules bent by design, why are the developers now suddenly holding themselves so fiercely to lore that cannot be upheld? To add to the frustration, the Viera were considered as a playable race long before Shadowbringers, initially due to be introduced in Heaven's Ward, but were piped by the dragon-like Aura. Fans were rightfully cautious that the race would be gender-locked to female only. However, concept arts of the initial Viera designs popped online, including early designs for male Viera. The male concept art mirrors the female designs, with the traditional armor being reworked for a more masculine build, albeit slightly more modest than the female design as always. Also, I'm sorry, please excuse my parakeets. They think I'm on the phone or something. Similarly, the Ronso, the inspiration for the new Hrothgar race, are represented by both male and female characters in Final Fantasy X, but female Hrothgar are notably absent in Final Fantasy XIV. Gender-locking the Hrothgar feels like a conscious choice to avoid creating a female design that leans more towards the monstrous rather than the more cutesy and petite options featured in other races' females' aesthetics. And this is a very, very, that's a big point that they made there. This also isn't the first time the Final Fantasy XIV team has found itself in hot water over gender-locking races. Prior to the game's relaunch as A Realm Reborn, two of the available races, the feline Mikote and the giant Rokugan, were gender-locked to female and male respectively. The reversal of this and the implementation of male Mikote and female Rokugan felt like a positive step towards giving players more character customization and creating a more diverse set of body options and representation. And as you see here, this is concept art of a female Mikote, female Viera, and the concept art for male Viera, which I could go on and on and on about how awesome this looks and how amazing it is and the foolishness for not including this, but I'll talk about that later. Continuing on. The gender locking of the Viera and the Hrothgar is a part of a larger problem with the sexual dimorphism between the genders across Final Fantasy XIV's races. It's especially prevalent in the Aura, a demonic-looking race with distinct horns and scales. The male bodies look bestial, with long limbs and exaggerated horns, whereas the women look considerably more waifish, with petite figures and large doe-like eyes. The giant-like Rogadin suffer similarly, with the men presenting a hyper-masculine ideal through the broad and powerful builds, while the women present a noticeably more dainty build, which, while more muscular than many other female races, is a very traditional feminine figure. The underlying issue here is that Final Fantasy XIV's creators seemingly refuse to present femininity with more monstrous design aesthetics. Races like the Viera and the Mikote mainly exist for sex appeal, and elsewhere the game falls back onto tired stereotypes. Women are always sleek and physically attractive, while men are heavily muscular and animalistic, both physically and mentally. And that's a very poignant point there. Final Fantasy XIV is an MMO prided on giving players an enormous variety of ways to express themselves and their character through appearance, race, and class. Its glamour system has spawned a highly creative community that use fashion to create unique and intricate character designs. So, it's frustrating to see a game that encourages such artistic expression then limits those same players through gender locking. And this is an image of the Hrothgar, as everybody has seen. This issue isn't exclusive to Final Fantasy XIV. The World of Warcraft has received criticism for years of its sexual dimorphism. While the game's overall aesthetic focuses on exaggerated features and proportions, for men this tends to lean towards the extreme heights and muscular bodies, while the female equivalent is slimmer, hourglass builds with noticeable breasts and hips. As with Final Fantasy XIV, there are considerably less monstrous features, like the elongated horns and ear tips, for the women of the World of Warcraft. Hope is not lost though. In an interview with GameSpot, Yoshida has acknowledged that while the team hasn't had enough time to consider the fan reaction towards the two new races, the team is open to feedback on gender locking of Viera and Hrothgar. For now, fans of the Bunny Boys and Giant Lion Women will have to be content living through the slew of fan art popping up across social media. And so that is the conclusion of the article. And I definitely want to add in and weigh in on this. They made some very, very, very good points. Once again, the article weighed in on the fact that lore reasons were given for the main reason why male Viera were not given to the players. And this has kind of been shot down because, as you can see, there is concept art for male Viera. And I believe in an interview, I'm not exactly sure which interview Naoki Yoshida did, but I believe that it was stated there were issues for time constraints. The amount of time and resources, money put into the development of a new race, the refitting of all of the clothing articles and animations and so on and so forth for a race, it was easier and more time effective to do so with one gender rather than doing it with two. And so since they wanted to roll out both races Hrothgar and Vieira. Hrothgar was their initial planned race, according to Yoshida, and Vieira was a heavily requested fan race, so they felt compelled to push both at the same time. Um, so, therefore they had to make some tough choices. I feel as if the developer should have been more transparent from the beginning with fans. And most importantly, not to half do something. Um, and I know this sounds very harsh and so on and so forth, but when I looked at the, the trial weekend when players were PC players, specifically I'm a PS4 player, so I wasn't able to participate in it, but I was able to watch the coverage by YouTubers such as Mr. Happy or Mioni or Work to Game in regards to Hrothgar and Vieira character creation when players were getting their hands on that for the first time, and what players felt they got was incomplete. Um, you know, certain things could not be equipped to both races. Example, hats. Until recently, the development team went back and corrected that and made that happen, made it possible. And I thank them for that. But also, the lack of hair options for Hrothgar. Um, and Vieira had hair options, but then they are specific to Vieira because of their models. And so when you create these two new races and you tell everybody these are the last races to potentially be added into the game, and they have so many strict stipulations on them, it's very restricting, and it's very counterintuitive to what this all-inclusive boasting of oh we pride ourselves on character customization and elaborate character customization. I don't really feel that Final Fantasy XIV's character customization is very elaborate, and that's a topic for another video. Um, but anyway, I feel the article hit the nail on the head, and I feel Final Fantasy XIV is best analyzed by viewing it through the lens of its developer's cultural background. Um, it is a Japanese MMO, and Japanese cultural aesthetics and ideals inevitably show up in the game's themes, styles, and character development. As the article pointed out, the females in-game mostly lean towards the male gaze fan service perspective. Um, Male characters seem to be designed to fill the role of stepping into a narrow cast range of masculine archetypes for male players to live through, while the female characters are heavily fan service leaning. And this might sound very biased, but it seems very prevalent. Um, and this is a reason why the heavy outcry against the gold saucer bunny suit or outfit, the gender lock reversal for that outfit being lifted, was a serious thing for many Japanese players. The Japanese player base strongly petitioned against it. And while the Western fan base mostly didn't raise much of an issue with it, there are many Western fans that really, really wanted this. They really wanted that bunny suit. And so the developers caved into the massive Western outcry for it, despite the large protest and petitioning against it from the Japanese fan base. Um, and I really, Westerners, mainly the U.S. especially, they come from a very different perspective in regards to physical and personal expression than the Japanese people tend to. Um, and said divide was very evident in the bunny suit gender lock matter, or gender unlock, matter. And I'd wager that unlocking that bunny suit for male characters was a potential test reaction to male Vieira. Perhaps the strong negative reaction to the sight of men in bunny outfits from the Japanese player base deterred the developers from pushing forward with male Vieira, despite the strong outcry from Western players. So that's my hunch. Um, I don't put it past them to kind of test the waters with that bunny suit. Um, yeah. So, of all the gender locked items in the game, why the specific pinup bunny outfit? Why was that the test ground? You know, and I don't know if we ever got an actual answer for that. But when you analyze some of the Japanese attitudes toward um, physical appearance and expectations based on how you look. Of course, this is prevalent everywhere in the world. Every culture and every country, city, um, neighborhood has certain expectations and certain stereotypes and certain views, ways of viewing the outward appearance. But specifically in Japan, let's take muscular bodies. Um, Muscular men or musculature is considered an extremely masculine thing, and in Western culture too. But there are certain behavioral expectations that come along when with someone who is heavily built. They have certain expectations or certain stereotypes or certain visions on that kind of body build. And you see that in the character design of the game. Let's take the Hrothgar. Yes, they are lion men, but they are one of the most muscular race types in the game that we have available to us. And their movements are quite bestial, they're quite brash. The same can be said for Highlanders, my favorite race to play. They're the more muscular human looking males, and they're very brash in their motions and their voices. Their emotes are gruff. Their facial options are gruff. Um, they have more facial hair versus, say, the Midlander, who is not as brash in their emotes. They're less facial hair. They're very thin. The amount of musculature or chiseled musculature that you can apply to them is minimal, and it mirrors a stereotypical Japanese body type or body ideal. It's very common for them, and it sounds very stereotypical, but it is so in game. Um, if you look at the Roganin, they suffer from the similar problem, as the article stated as well. They're the more muscular characters are more brash in emotes. They're more um, boisterous, and those mirror a cultural um, stereotypical view of that body type and people with that body type. And this is very prevalent throughout all the races in the game, and there are physical archetypes and so on and so forth. And that, once again, so this all plays into gender locking. Um, and I really, as the article states, they believe that the gender locking of Hrothgar, especially with Final Fantasy X's pre-created female Ronso, which are the Hrothgar basically, they have those character models. They exist. You have the blueprint right there ready for you to take and re-implement or tweak. So it's not as much work as creating like the male Vieira from scratch. Um, Yet they didn't use it. So, what's the excuse? Um, but it plays into what the article says as not wanting to create a female race that breaks the mold of the desired aesthetic. The desired feminine aesthetic for Japan is preferably the dainty, the very stereotypically feminine motions, clothing, hair, um, and body physique. Um, so to create the well, not to create because it's already been made in Final Fantasy X, female Ronso or Hrothgar are actually physically gruff. They look like lionesses. They're, they don't fit that dainty, stereotypical Japanese aesthetic for beauty, feminine beauty, that the other races do. Um, and so I believe it's a conscious choice to exclude that. Um, Someone, and I've heard this somewhere, and apologies for not having the source readily available, but I believe that it was stated in one of the many interviews that Yoshida did that when it talks about the potential for male Vieira, and when an interviewer asked Yoshida about this in retrospect after the reveal, and he says that, oh, we have, we felt like we had, and this is me rough quoting or paraphrasing, but we felt like we had more than enough um, physically attractive male races, essentially. You know, like the good looking male characters, and we figured we needed something gruff and brash. Kind of in that vein, he said something to that effect. And so thus Hrothgar fit the bill, and that's what they did. They went to the extreme with that, and I get it. I do understand that. Yes, we Hrothgar is a welcome um, form of diversity in the game and in character creation. I welcome that. Um, but in the same regards, when they say that we have more than enough attractive male type characters, let's put a brash monster like male character. Well, where is that same attitude when it comes to female characters? I'm absolutely positive that there are female players or male players that want to play a monstrous, gruff type of female character. Um, just like there are male and female players, trans players who want to prance around or walk around and go into the charge into the heat of battle with that Playboy bunny suit. you know, there are people who want those things, and that's a part of their self-expression. It's a part of how they envision their character. This is the same reason why our characters don't speak much, because to put too many words into the Warrior of Light's mouth strips the player from being able to insert their own personal dialogue into the mouth of their character to react to these scenes, to react to these situations. So why is it that we're being dictated how we should express ourselves physiologically in the game? That, a male Vieira is, for some reason frowned upon, like it shouldn't exist. In the game. You shouldn't play. It doesn't make sense to play as this, or it doesn't make sense to play as a female Hrothgar. Um, I I think they're excuses. I really do. Um, so, all that being said, I really feel like the devs should have been upfront with the players. About their plans to implement Hrothgar, and their desire to fulfill the fan-requested Vieira, knowing that it would take time and resources, and just, hey, players want this, they'll wait for it. So tell them, hey, we want to make sure we do this correctly. We want to make sure that we can make you happy and that we can stay on schedule, and in order to do that, we require more time. And I really feel like the community will be understanding if they're unable to get their hands on VR earlier, but they'll get what they want when it's available. I think more people will be understanding than not, especially if it means at the end of the wait they'll get a perfect, polished, finished product, complete, both genders. But here we are with Shadowbringers, and there's a mass amount of players who's sitting there like, well, I guess I won't be a bunny boy, and they're still talking about it. Yeah, so it's a big thing. It's very important now to a lot of people. So, this is the conclusion. I want to know what you think. I want to know how you reacted to the news of the gender locking. What do you think about gender locking in Final Fantasy XIV specifically? What do you think about Vieira and Hrothgar as they stand now from a character creation standpoint, from a gameplay standpoint? When Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers debuted, did you Fantasia into a Hrothgar or a Vieira? If so, why? I want to know. If not, why not? I want to know. I'll give you my answer really quickly. Of course, of course, I shouldn't say of course, but I did not. I typically play male characters. It's just what I like to play in Final Fantasy XIV anyway. And I would have definitely changed to a Vieira. I wasn't one of the people that was super duper hyped about having Vieira in the game. I was kind of like, oh, okay, I like Fran. She's cool. But, take it or leave it. But at the prospect of seeing what the development team would have done with a male Vieira race, I want to see how they would have conceptualized this and how they would have implemented this. I was that prospect alone made me want to play a male Vieira, despite some of my character role play lore-wise, personal lore. I'm like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. I want that, and I was excited about it, and then they dropped the ball. So when they didn't implement male Vieira, I was like somewhat out of protest. I'm not going to Fantasia to Hrothgar. I'm not going to Fantasia to female Vieira. Now, I'll change, I did change my mind a little bit and say, you know what, eventually I'll create a Hrothgar, which I did create one and save the appearance, just to play around with it in character creation, see how that works and feels. And maybe for a brief period of time, I'll, Fantasia to one to try it out. I don't think I'll stay that way for long at all. I'm pretty positive of that. But out of protest, I was kind of like, nope, I will not be one of the numbers, using the Fantasia. And I'm sure somebody was clocking and gathering that data of how many people Fantasia that day to, Hrothgar. I'm pretty sure somebody kept that account. And I did not want to be included in that number as a statement. Let me know if you were one of those people that were of a similar mind as me. I'm curious. If you feel differently, please let me know. I want to know what you think. I want to pick your brain. And maybe your perspective will change mine. You never know. I'm open to new perspectives. So, comment. Please, once again, look at Kelly Pask's article for yourself. A link will be in the description below. And yeah, like, subscribe. Hopefully, I'll see you in more content when my upcoming content. Please come back and check me out. And we'll have more Final Fantasy discussions and so on and so forth. So, alright, this is the end. I will hopefully see you all later. Take care. Happy adventuring. Bye.